In a baffling case from Anderson, Indiana, neighbors Ralph Belvedere, 62, and William Bragg, age 63, vanished without a trace on October 21st, 2015. Bloodstains and signs of a struggle were discovered in Ralph's home, alongside a stolen Pontiac Aztec and missing coin collection. Let's dive into this a little deeper and see what we can figure out. Today's video is going to be about two missing people. They were neighbors, they were friends, and they hung out and they disappeared together. Looks like the house was robbed, looks like they have a suspect, but problem is, suspect is already dead in an unrelated robbery. So that leaves us two missing people and nobody knows what happened to them. Before we get started diving into this, let's go over the official report. Now, I'm not going to read it word for word, but I'll give you the gist of what I found online. So it looks like Ralph and William were neighbors, and it looks like William was hanging out at Ralph's house. Now, the official report goes, Ralph and William both went missing October 21st, 2015. When police went over to Ralph's house, they discovered that it was ransacked and there was blood and obvious signs of a struggle in the house. Both William and Ralph were missing. The 2002 black Aztec is also missing. And it looks like Ralph was robbed. He had a coin collection and that was also missing. The official report reads that there is a man named Eddie Connor, and it looks like he robbed and killed William and Ralph. Now this happened in Anderson, Indiana. Now here's a crazy part to this story. It reads that Eddie killed William and Ralph, put their bodies in Ralph's 2002 Aztec, and drove all the way down to Alabama. There's a town called Florala, Alabama, and it's literally right on the border. Florida, Alabama. Florala. The report also reads that when he got to Florala, he went to someone's house, he pulled up in a black vehicle, he immediately said he's got to go do some things, he leaves. 3 hours later, he shows up on foot at a neighboring town, calls his buddy to come pick him up, and he says that these two guys left him, so he had to get a ride home. Then fast forward into June of 2016. Eddie sells the stolen coins to buy a van. He then takes that van and he drives up to Kentucky where he commits an armed robbery. The town in Kentucky was called Bowling Green and it was right on the border. There was a police chase and it went all the way down into Cottontown, Tennessee. Eddie managed to escape on foot and hide out in a nearby house. When the homeowner returned, an altercation ensued and both men were killed. So here is where we are today. We have the suspect, the person who killed William and Ralph. We have the suspect who is dead. He is the only one who knew what happened in Ralph's house. We do not know where the 2002 black Pontiac Aztec went, and that is where we are today. The theory goes he left this person's house he went to, and we'll get into the details in just a minute. He went and dumped the car with the two bodies in the back of the car, and he ended up walking from wherever he dumped the car on foot to the neighboring city. Called his friend, come pick him up, and the rest you already know about. This is another one of those cases where you think it would be, okay, we know where point A was, and we know where he was picked up at point B. He left point A, and 3 hours later, he ended up at point B, right? And he was on foot. So you do the mathematical equation, that should kind of narrow down the search of bodies of water, wooded areas, or abandoned buildings where this vehicle could be sitting. Now, the fact that they're still missing to this day tells me that if the vehicle and the bodies were in a barn or in an abandoned building somewhere, it would have been found by now. Unless, you know, it happens, there are abandoned garages and old barns laying around that people haven't visited in many years. Then you got somebody who likes to explore buildings, or somebody who's looking for old missing hot rods or just relic hunters or something. They come across the abandoned building and find a vehicle inside. It's happened before, but usually it's those shows that you watch where they found a pristine 1957 Chevy Bel Air. Been sitting there, it's got like 600 miles on it, something like that. That's where I'm going with this. So I don't think the vehicle is in some kind of abandoned building. Now this was 2015 when they went missing. So it's been about 9 years. I think it actually has been 9 years. So if the vehicle was in the woods, which has happened, happens all the time, cars crash off into the woods, and a few years later they're found by a hunter or something. Well, 9 years of somebody purposely dumping a vehicle in the woods and nobody's seen it yet. And we're talking South Georgia, panhandle of Florida is where the cities are at, right? I am highly doubting that the vehicle could still be sitting there covered up by the trees. These are all just theories, of course, but we're being real here. We're going to talk about, like, is there a chance this vehicle's sitting somewhere? It's definitely not abandoned on the side of the road because they would have been notified by now. If there's 2 bodies in it, it definitely would have started. It's hard to be crude, but you know what I'm saying. When it would stink. They would definitely be noticed. And abandoned cars get picked up by the tow trucks all the time. So they're not abandoned on the side of the road. They're not in a building, and I don't think they're in the woods. This wasn't a crash. If he would have taken it down a dirt road somewhere, even if he pushed it off in the woods, it would be right off the dirt road. You would have seen it right then, right? So we're going to water. And if Florida is known for anything, there are bodies of water everywhere. Not only there are rivers, there are streams and creeks, which, you know, it'd be pretty hard to hide a car in those. But then you got lakes everywhere in Florida. And time again, missing people are being found in Florida in bodies of water. And it's just these little ponds on the side of the road that are deep enough to hide a vehicle. And this particular area that I'm thinking this vehicle was dumped, it's called Laurel Hill, Florida. And it's up on the panhandle, and it's right below Florala, which is on the border of Florida and Alabama, like I said. And the spot where he initially went to the house and was spotted in a black vehicle was down off Auburn Road in Crestview. I don't know the exact address of the house, but that road is not very long. So if you pull it up on Google Maps, you can see the road. Maybe it's a couple miles. So somewhere on that road, there's a house that he showed up in, and there was a girl. In the details of this case, I don't know the girl's name, but the girl showed up. She spotted Eddie pulling up in the vehicle. And then they leave. Now, nobody in the house saw 2 other people in the vehicle. Granted, I don't know if they were looking, but 2 people wasn't seen. It was just Eddie. So it's safe to say if Eddie killed him in Indiana and drove all the way down, the 2 bodies are in the back of that Aztec. So he leaves point A, and he drives somewhere to dump the car, and then he ends up in Laurel Hill at a gas station. Now, these towns are very small, too. Very small. And so this was a 3-hour gap. You got to think, he walked somewhere to get to Laurel Hill gas station to call his buddy to come pick him up. And he drove from Crestview. So you do the math, it narrows it down to walking distance, you know, let's just say 2 hours. We'll even say 3 hours. How far can someone walk from that gas station that he ended up at? 3 hours out. And obviously, if you left point A and there's a 3-hour gap, then you're going to lessen that time. Would it be 2 hours? I mean, did he immediately know where he was going? Was he very familiar with this area? Like, he had a spot already picked out to dump this vehicle. It's the perfect spot. It's in the middle of nowhere. No one's going to see it. Chances are it's got gators in it. It's not an ideal place to go, but it was accessible by vehicle. Now that is if he had a plan. Or he didn't have a plan and he just found a spot in between Crestview and Laurel Hill. So you start narrowing down the search. So we'll put a circle around Laurel Hill and let's say an hour and a half. Or let's say 2 hours. Like he drove an hour somewhere, dumped the vehicle, and then he walked to Laurel Hill. So you got to think he's in walking distance closer to Laurel Hill than he was in Crestview, or else he would have just walked back to the house. You know, why would he walk to a gas station to call somebody to come get him instead of just walking back to the house he was originally going to, right? So I would believe it's safe to say that it's walking distance of maybe an hour from Laurel Hill. put a circle around Laurel Hill and start picking every body of water in Laurel Hill, the odds are probably in the search team's favor to do that, draw a circle around Laurel Hill and just start checking bodies of water all the way around. Spiral yourself out until you've cleared at least a 3-hour walking distance, which is more than enough because he didn't leave the house and dump the vehicle across the street and then walk 3 hours to a neighboring city. That doesn't make any sense. Like, he was close to Laurel Hill, he dumped that car near that city, and then he walked to the gas station to get picked up. That's the only thing that makes sense. We got to stick with common sense and realistic theories when it comes to searching for these missing people. 9 times out of 10, it's cut and dry. And that other 1 out of 10 chances is those cases that no matter what we do, we cannot find them. And but this case is reading a little bit different than that in my eyes. Now, Adam and myself, along with other search teams, have searched for these guys, and we started in Indiana. We talked to the family, and we didn't know all these other details. All we knew, there was 2 missing people out of Anderson, Indiana. And that's where we went, and we started searching the city. We started searching ponds. We ended up finding 1 vehicle, and there's a video out on that. And it obviously it wasn't them, but the police, the small town in Anderson, they made a huge deal about this. And I'm sure you guys, if you guys follow me at all, you know about this video because the family came out, half the city was out there watching. It's something they don't get to see that much. So it was pretty cool, but it is also very frustrating that it wasn't him. But then we learned from the family, we get all this information the same day, that chances are they're not even in Indiana. You know, they made it all the way down to Florida, and somewhere around that area is where they're going to be found. And it's just time now. Like, eventually, I believe somebody's going to find this car, as long as the bodies of water around Laurel Hill keep getting searched. I don't think Crestview, it's possible, but like I said, why would somebody dump the vehicle in Crestview and then walk all the way up to Laurel Hill? And it's a big gap. They're not right next to each other. So could you even make it to Laurel Hill in 3 hours? I personally have walked 15 miles on foot when I was a teenager, and I know for a fact it took me all night. Like, we're talking early, like evening time until the next morning. 8 to 10 hours to walk 15 miles. And I don't know if that's accurate or not, but that's just my experience. But that is exactly how much time it took me. So then you got to think about, well, how far is Laurel Hill from Crestview? So I'm putting my money on Laurel Hill right there. The family has not given up hope. There is a Facebook page, and I believe it's ran by one of the daughters of the missing men. And every year, you know, she makes posts. You know, they're very sad. Another year's gone by. Another birthday without you here. It's very heartbreaking to see somebody who, instead of enjoying holidays and birthdays and stuff like that, you're mourning the loss or the mystery of not even knowing where your father is at. You know, I'm sure the family has accepted the fact that they have perished, but they don't have anyone to bury. They don't have closure because they don't know where his body is. Chances are his body, along with his buddy, is still in the back of that Aztec, and it's sitting somewhere just waiting to be found. There is another theory that we can think about too. What if Eddie leaves the house and the bodies were already disposed of, and he just had himself a black Aztec he had to get rid of? What if he sold it or gave it away or had some connection to somebody who could get rid of it for him? So that means he disposed of the bodies by themselves somewhere, which, if that's the case, is incredibly hard to find, especially if you don't have a suspect who could maybe someday tell you, confess, a deathbed confession. What if somebody is driving around in his black Aztec and they didn't even know? Now, I'm guessing this guy who did the robbery, he sounds like, to me, obviously a cold-blooded murderer and a career criminal, but does that make him meticulous in cleaning a vehicle so you can't tell that it had 2 dead bodies in it? I'm sure there was a lot of blood. There was blood at the house, the scene where the struggle took place. Chances are they were killed at that house in Indiana, put in the back of the Aztec, and he drove all the way down to Florida, which is amazing by itself. Because could you imagine being a witness, like if you park to get gas and you're next to somebody getting gas and they just happen to peek into that window and see that? That's obviously going to be called in pretty darn quick. So the fact that he managed to get to Florida from Indiana with 2 bodies in the back and no one's seen him, that's pretty amazing by itself. So either he was very lucky or he got rid of the bodies on the way, anywhere from Indiana all the way down to Florida. And that just leaves the vehicle. The vehicle obviously is a lot harder to hide than bodies. I know I'm kind of bouncing all over the place here, but I'm thinking the 2 most plausible explanations is, like I said, he had the bodies in the Black Aztec when he arrived in Crestview. He leaves with all 3. He finds a place to dump them that's closer to Laurel Hill than it was to Crestview. And then he walks to Laurel Hill to call to get a ride home. Or theory number 2, on the way from Indiana, he finds a place or finds a way to dispose of the bodies, and he keeps the vehicle and keeps going all the way down to Crestview. And then the same story kicks in. He leaves in the vehicle without the bodies, but he still has to get rid of this vehicle because it's linked. That's a dead giveaway. That's not his vehicle. So he goes somewhere close to Laurel Hill and disposes of the vehicle. And that's a variant right there too. Did he dump it in a body of water? Did he give it to somebody? Did he have a connection where somebody could destroy the vehicle, like at some kind of chop shop or junkyard, something like that, which happens. You hear stories like that all the time too. Or he sold the vehicle to somebody, and that somebody didn't even know that that vehicle was involved in this kind of heinous crime. That one's a fetch though. That's a far fetch. To wrap things up, this is my theory, and I hope you guys run with it. If you guys are search teams and you're watching me, I implore you, head down there to Laurel Hill. But what I'm thinking is the vehicle, at least the vehicle, made it all the way to Crestview. He leaves Crestview to dispose of the vehicle closer to Laurel Hill than Crestview. Disposes it, walks to Laurel Hill, and gets a ride home. The vehicle is key. If you go to Laurel Hill and you draw a circle around it, give yourselves 5-10 miles in a circle or radius, right? Start picking out every body of water. There's a good chance you're going to find that vehicle, and there's a very good chance you're going to find the 2 missing men in the back of it. After listening to this for that long, you know chances are these 2 men are not alive anymore. The family wants them back regardless. They need to bury their father. They need to bury their grandfather. Whatever the case is, they need closure. And without knowing, it is the ultimate pain of not knowing where your loved one is. Dead or alive, I can only imagine how horrible it must feel. So, let's come together as a community. I know we can do it. Everybody get on the computer, see what you can figure out. If you're in Crestview or Laurel Hill area, jump on your boat, get the sonar out, see what you can find. We plan on going back and continuing the search, but by all means, we don't call dibs. If you're in the area or if you want to travel to that area, start your search. That's the best thing we can do for these families, is come together as a community. If they feel like the authorities have failed them, at least they know the community out there as a whole of hardworking Americans want to help. And cut and dry, that's about it. I hope you guys enjoy watching these videos as much as I like making them, because I really do feel like this could be a new home for me, talking about the missing and giving a voice to the voiceless. So make sure you guys like and subscribe to this channel and leave a comment. Tell me what you think, tell me what you don't like, and tell me what I need to improve on. And if you got a hot tip, make sure you tell me in the comments too below. Till we meet again, my name is Jeremy. I will see you guys on that next video.